Let's get into it here. Going to start with the 5 biggest stories of the week, and then we'll go team by conference in alphabetical order. First story of week 1, Evan, comes out of the Green Bay Packers, where sadly, on one of the last plays of the game, they lose Jordan Love to an MCL sprain. Could have been worse. Could have torn his ACL and been out for the year. Sounds like it's a rough 3-week timeline here. They're going to go with Malik Willis going forward. Evan, this is obviously not good for anyone who has Packers on their fantasy teams. How bad is it? Any thoughts on Packers quarterback situation right now?
It is devastating because Malik Willis can't play in the league, and it was incredibly, and it's easy to say in hindsight, but I mean, we were talking about it even before week 1. It was incredibly irresponsible for the Packers, usually one of the smartest teams in the league, to go into the season with Malik Willis as the only other quarterback on the roster. They are going to bring up Sean Clifford if they haven't already from the practice squad, but this is a really bad situation among quarterbacks that have played in recent years. Like, Malik Willis is one of the stone worst. He's got some athleticism, but that's about it. We've seen nothing positive from him in the as a passer, really even in the preseason. It's an absolute disaster, and I would say that with the exception of maybe Jaden Reed, I don't know, and Josh Jacobs, just because he's going to get volume, I don't know if you can start any Packers with any level of confidence at this point.
Yeah, really scary on Packers stuff. They do have Sean Clifford, as Evan mentioned. I, of course, am no college tape bro. However, because Sean Clifford went to Penn State, I've seen plenty of him. It's not it. He's not it, man. He is not it. And so, yeah, scary. I will say, though, Evan, everyone's mega high on Josh Jacobs before the year. Started off really slow in this game and then looked awesome. I thought he actually, I know Saquon Barkley looked better in the box score, and Saquon was awesome. We'll get to him. Josh Jacobs may have even played better than Saquon Barkley. The Malik Willis stuff is certainly scary, though. So, yeah, Evan, Josh Jacobs' thoughts going forward. He's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times even with Malik Willis.
Yeah. I mean, in the first half, I started getting tweets. People were like, how wrong were you about Josh Jacobs? Should we be worried about Josh Jacobs? I was like, I kind of am, 6 carries for 4 yards, I think, is what he had at the half. But he came out of that half, went in, took some sort of, upper in the locker room, came out, guns blazing, ripping off big runs. So that was a promising second half, of course. I wish that he would have been more involved in the passing game. Only 3 targets, 2 for 20 receiving. But I mean, look, the scoring expectations for the Packers are way down, and you need Josh Jacobs to score touchdowns. He did finish the first game with 100 yards from scrimmage, but he didn't score, and they're going to score way less with Malik Willis in there. So again, it's devastating.
Okay. One of the stories coming into the season was how would the Packers use their wide receivers? How much would Dontavian Wicks play? How much would Jaden Reed play? Etc. The Packers quarterbacks had 38 dropbacks in that game against the Eagles. Romeo Doubs led the way with 34, as expected. Jaden Reed next with 28. Christian Watson, 28. Dontavian Wicks, 16. Certainly a scary run out for Dontavian Wicks here. You combine that with the Malik Willis stuff, and if you had to, I don't want to, but if you had to, I could see you dropping Dontavian Wicks. Evan, any thoughts on how the Packers use their wide receivers against the Eagles?
Yeah, I think that in 12-team leagues, you can drop Dontavian Wicks. He's the number 4 receiver. He had some opportunities in this game, but the footing, I think it's important to keep in context. The footing at this stadium in Brazil was an absolute disaster. I don't know why they played a game in Brazil in the first place. It was really, really stupid. Everything that Darius Slay said about it, on down to the crime that's going on in Brazil. It was such a stupid idea, and it had a major effect on the outcomes in this game. And Dontavian Wicks struggled with the footing just like the rest of I wonder if it contributed to Jordan Love's injury. I don't know. It was a disaster, though. And, yeah, there's no reason for near-term optimism about Dontavian Wicks whatsoever.
Yeah, I can answer why they played a game there. They're trying to make money.
Well,
they go to Brazil.
I know. They're trying to make it an international sport.
Exactly.
What makes you think of Brazil? You think you're ever going to compete against soccer in Brazil? No, dude, no.
Last usage note I had on the Packers was I couldn't believe this one. Tucker Kraft missed the entire offseason. I mean, the entire offseason. He was even questionable for week 1 with a back injury. Luke Musgrave was mostly healthy for the whole offseason. But in this game, Tucker Kraft ran 30 routes and Luke Musgrave 8. So those last round best ball Tucker Kraft bags, it sucks with Malik Willis out there. But generally, I feel pretty good about those. Was pretty shocked by that. Maybe they just think Tucker Kraft is like a way better player. I don't know if you have a take there, Evan.
Yeah, they drafted Luke Musgrave quite a bit higher than Tucker Kraft. They drafted them both in the same draft class. Tucker Kraft played pretty well last season, though, and I wonder if, I mean, he's definitely a better blocker than Luke Musgrave. I wonder if they just think he's a better football player at this point. That's what was reflected by their usage in week 1. Luke Musgrave is, he's a drop.
Yep. Easy drop.
Yep.
Okay. Story number 2 comes out of the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a bad one for me in my bags. J.K. Dobbins, off of the ACL, knee issues, off of the Achilles, looked very, very strong as the Chargers control this game over the Raiders, roll to a win. J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries, 135 yards, 1 touchdown. Gus Edwards, 11 carries, 26 yards, 0 touchdowns. Kimani Vidal was a healthy scratch. Now, I have some J.K. Dobbins takes I need to get off my chest, but I will let Evan go first here. What did you think of Chargers backfield coming out of week 1?
Yeah, we have a clip somewhere. They clipped it of me like talking up J.K. Dobbins as a sleeper. This is usually not for Twitter for the video team.
Yeah,
a rare thing that I get right, so I have to pump my bag here. That's what all the kids are saying. J.K. Dobbins was like legit one of the best running backs in the NFL in week 1. At one point, he was the fastest ball carrier in the NFL according to Next Gen Stats. I think he got overtaken by the end of all the games being played, but he looked incredible. They said that they were going to go with the hot hand. They wound up splitting almost evenly in terms of touches. Gus Edwards finished with 12. J.K. Dobbins finished with 13 touches. But I like that at least we know it's a 2-man backfield. We know which guy's more explosive. As long as J.K. Dobbins stays healthy, like he has a chance to be a league winner. They're going to run the ball consistently over and over and over every single week. And his level of explosiveness was, he really stood out as a stud in week 1.
Okay, so yeah, to Evan's point, J.K. Dobbins recorded 19 miles an hour, which was 19th best fastest ball carrier. Nico Collins actually led the way in that stat at 21.8 miles an hour. So yes, J.K. Dobbins looked and played awesome in this game. I think their offensive line is going to be strong all year.
Yeah.
The snaps were 33 for Dobbins and 17 routes. Gus Edwards, 24 snaps, 5 routes. So usage was good.
Yeah, the early returns on the Joe Alt pick are awesome, by the way. He stoned Max Crosby. Max Crosby finished with 0 pressures in this game. And by the way, if you watch the Notre Dame game against Northern Illinois, Notre Dame really misses Joe Alt.
And go look at Brandon Thorne's Twitter. Of course, Brandon Thorne does the offensive line, defensive line mismatch for us. He showed how Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt were dominant. And so, yeah, I think that they're going to run the ball and run the ball effectively. I am underweight J.K. Dobbins coming into the year, not because I thought he wouldn't play well in week 1, but because I thought he cannot sustain this, right? We've seen this before. J.K. Dobbins had some big games for the Ravens coming back from injury and just kept getting hurt. And that's what happens when you have multiple knee ligament tears. That's what happens when you have Achilles on your resume. So I don't want to go overboard on the J.K. Dobbins stuff personally here and say it's going to be November, it's going to be December, and he's going to be ripping off 10 yards a carry, but maybe he's the bionic man. He's young enough. He's not old. Maybe he's the bionic man, and maybe it works out. So I am not feeling like terrible about my J.K. Dobbins preseason position yet, but obviously I'm queasy about it, and it looks like an early win there for Evan on that one. Other Chargers thoughts. I was wondering what you thought about the Ladd McConkey stuff, Evan. He had a sick move at the goal line to score a touchdown. Ladd McConkey led the team in targets with 7, but the way this team is going to play, and they're not going to be able to play this way every week. They're not going to have a home game against the Raiders every week. But Justin Herbert, 17 of 26 for 144 yards. ADOT was 7.0 yards, 1 touchdown. That's the way they're going to try to play. This ball control kind of play defense, run the ball kind of scheme. I thought Ladd looked pretty good personally. I'm just worried about the way this team's going to play. Evan, any thoughts on the new scheme for the pass game?
Yeah, I thought that Ladd looked pretty good. I would not consider him any more than like a wide receiver 4 at this point. Maybe you'll use him in bye week crunches. But he's a low ADOT player. And I mean, he's probably their best receiver. Okay. But I think that on a weekly basis, Justin Herbert is going to hover in like the range of 150 to 210 passing yards. And there's just not going to be a big pie to go around. I mean, no pass catcher for the Chargers in this game even got to 40 yards.
Yeah, and that was as expected with his coaching staff, right? No one should be surprised by that whatsoever. Last note on the Chargers, DJ Chark was out for this game. Did think it was notable that Quentin Johnston actually ran 24 out of 29 routes here. Ladd McConkey, 22. Josh Palmer, 27. So at least Quentin Johnston's ahead of Darius Davis and Simi Fioco. And Quentin Johnston made a couple plays that I thought were solid.
He can be effective with the ball in his hands. Just you got to get the ball in his hands. You got to make a commitment to doing that.
Yep. Third story comes out of Atlanta. The people are telling me, Evan, that Kirk Cousins is completely cooked. They're telling me that the reason the Falcons used the number 8 overall pick on Michael Penix is because they realized Cousins was cooked, got buyer's remorse, and were like, oh no, we just spent $100 million on Kirk Cousins, but you know what? We realize he's cooked. We better draft Michael Penix. That's the narrative that's out there right now. It's compounded by the fact that they barely played Michael Penix in the preseason, which is really weird for a rookie who wasn't expected to play. Now, in this game, Kirk Cousins couldn't even drop back. They had him under center on one offensive play the entire game. Everything else was shotgun pistol. It's scary. Now, he won't be facing TJ Watt and the Steelers defense every game, but I get why people are scared and all these conspiracy theories. I wouldn't even call them conspiracy theories. Takes on Falcons quarterback are flying off. Evan, what's your take on the Kirk Cousins situation?
I mean, they're like legitimate data points. It's not conspiracy theories. They're legitimate data points. The team making several different actions all lined up in a row that suggest that there's something wrong here. I agree. There are like 5 really strong data points on down to how they used him in the week 1 game. You mentioned one, that's always been Kirk Cousins' forte, is like getting the ball from the center, play action, extreme efficiency as a play action passer. That was not a part of the game plan whatsoever. I don't think they had a single play action play in the game. He was in the pistol the entire time. He didn't look like he could push off and generate his usual level of zip and velocity. It's extremely concerning. And I agree with you. It is not a conspiracy.
Now, TJ Watt wrecked this game. I mean, TJ Watt was in Kirk Cousins' grill the entire game. He could not do anything.
Cam Hayward was a beast in this game as well. There's no question. The Steelers' defensive front really controlled this game.
Right. And so next week they play at the Eagles, a little bit of a easier somewhat matchup here for Kirk Cousins. But yeah, I think along the lines of Kyle Pitts and Drake London, it's a bit scary. We might see Michael Penix though sooner rather than later, and maybe that'll be better for Pitts and London. Any thoughts on what you saw from Pitts, who was actually on Evan's shy away list this year, a controversial shy away guy, and then also Drake London?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts could not have been more wide open on his touchdown. That was just a gift from the heavens to Leone and the spreadsheet socialists. I mean, the Steelers did not cover Kyle Pitts on that.
And he was like the 4th read too. It was like Kirk Cousins looked to the right, looked to the middle, and then he was like, oh my God, Kyle Pitts is standing there wide open. I will say Kyle Pitts did have, I believe, a 17-yard catch called back by kind of a bogus penalty in this game.
Yeah,
also.
That's what we're doing. We're fishing for plays that got called back. Kyle Pitts. I think he was the number 1 fantasy tight end on the week because no tight ends did anything.
Correct.
If you got like 8 points from your tight end, you were cooking.
One point I wanted to make on the London and Pitt stuff, much like the Rams used to do with Zach Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Darnell Mooney ran 100% of the routes. Every single route, London, Pitts, and Mooney were out there for. I just did the waiver show with Dago. We talked a little bit about Darnell Mooney, and I think, anybody out there running 100% of the routes that's on waivers is at least worth considering. So yeah, that's a good thing. Bijan usage was also a good thing. Bijan got 18 carries and 5 targets in a game the Falcons only ran 50 plays. If they can be competent on offense, Bijan's going to smash. I mean, absolutely erupt.
Drake London had Joey Porter Jr. on him for most of the game, a real physical big corner, one of the biggest cornerbacks in the league. Actually, people thought that him coming out of college that he might play safety, but he's been like a really physical presence, and he's had some games where he took guys away. He wasn't on Drake London every play, but I think it was like over 60% of the time. I'm not worried about Drake London. With that said, I recently got asked, who would you rather have going forward, Stephon Diggs or Drake London?
Yeah. And
Tough
you
one,
said
right?
Stephon Diggs. And you said Stephon Diggs.
I haven't answered yet.
We'll get to Steph Diggs. I had a little bit of concern about the way Steph Diggs was used. Tweeted about it
Me
a little
too.
bit this morning, but yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. My lean is still to stick with Drake London there, not eliminate our priors too fast. But yeah,
I think I would agree with that.
but man, CJ Stroud. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Fourth story comes out of the Rams. Sad one. Puka Nacua goes down, and it looks like a bad one. I don't know that this is related to the knee injury that he came into the season with, but it easily could be. Puka Nacua goes down after 15 routes. He's going to miss at least 4 games now and maybe more. After Puka Nacua left that Sunday night game against the Lions, they went to Tyler Johnson as his direct backup. Routes ended up Cooper Kupp, 100% of the routes. Demarcus Robinson, 47 out of 51. Tyler Johnson, 33 out of 51. You saw Tyler Johnson, who used to play for the Bucs, made a nice play where he kind of stopped on a dime and ripped off a nice play. He has not done much in his NFL career, though. That said, Evan, you know what I think about Matthew Stafford, the wide receiver kingmaker. You don't have to be that good to put up stats when you play for Matthew Stafford. So, Evan, what do you think about the Puka Nacua injury and fallout from that?
Yeah, and if you're in that 3 receiver set, like, you're going to play a ton. So if Tyler Johnson can lock himself in there, he was way ahead of Tutu Atwell
and Jordan Whittington.
Yeah, I kind of always liked Tyler Johnson a little bit since he came out of Minnesota, but he's really bounced around. He reminded me of Miles Austin. You remember the old Cowboys receiver? Cooper Kupp looked great. You know who I thought looked good was Colby Parkinson in this game, and he played a ton because he's that the tight end in the 3x1s, and he's just going to be on the field a ton. So he actually had one of the better tight end scores on the week, going 4 for 47. Yeah, I did that show with Greg Rosenthal before the season on NFL Daily, his new podcast, and he was like, he works real closely with people that know stuff about the Rams, and he was like, I would fade Puka Nacua this season, and also there was a Twitter doctor who told me that he thought that there might be a PCL injury. They kept calling it, McVay kept calling it a bursa sac.
Yes.
But the Twitter doctor was like, it definitely is a bursa sac, but I think it also might be a PCL. And Puka was struggling to come back. Like, he couldn't open it up as a runner. He goes out in week 1. They're using him as a lead blocker again, coming off this injury. Just they put him. He's in traffic all the time. He winds up aggravating the injury. He goes on IR. I was talking last night with Leone. I was like, man, is he a drop? Because he's out for the next 4 weeks. Then the buys really set in. And then, the PCL injuries are really, really bad. I mean, that's a really bad knee injury to have, especially you've already had one aggravation. I think his season, I would be worried that his season is already finished.
Yeah. I get that concern. I can't drop Puka. Obviously, you have an IR spot, you're not dropping Puka. But if you have a reasonably sized bench, or really any bench, I think you have to hang on and see what happens here. There's very few guys on waivers that can do what Puka can do, but I agree with you. It's bad. I mean, it's flat bad. And it's also compounded by the fact that the Rams, they lost so many offensive linemen. I mean, they're down to backups along their entire offensive line at this point, and they might have to go to more 2 tight end sets, which I know McVay doesn't want to do, but they might have to go to more of that just to try to keep Stafford upright at this point. So yeah, it's definitely not good.
Yeah, to detail the offensive line injury, so they already had Alaric Jackson, their starting left tackle, suspended. His fill-in, Joe Noteboom, ankle injury. That sounds like a high ankle injury, week to week. Right guard Kevin Dotson suffered an ankle injury in this game. Rob Havenstein did not play at right tackle in this game. And Steve Avila suffered an MCL sprain. He's week to week. Jonah Jackson, their starting center, missed almost all of training camp due to a shoulder injury. Literally every single starter on their offensive line has been injured fairly significantly within the past month. And it looks like they're going to be without at least 3 of them, probably 4, maybe 5. No, at least 3 starters, maybe 4, going for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you're a DraftKit Pro subscriber, our rest of season top 150 rankings will be up Wednesday by noon. Cooper Kupp is going to get, we already had Cooper Kupp before the season as like a mid second round pick in a lot of formats. I mean, you could make a case that Cooper Kupp is just an absolute smash. I was looking at
Yeah.
some of the data last year from when Puka wasn't on the field and Kupp was. I mean, we're talking about 33, 35% of the targets for Cooper Kupp here from Matthew Stafford.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
would look at Cooper Kupp like offensive player of the year odds.
yeah. Agree with Evan on Colby Parkinson, one of my favorite late round tight ends, along with Noah Fant. Colby Parkinson, 42 routes on 51 dropbacks. ADOT was under 2 yards, but did look fast, just like getting to the edge. And the last thing, Evan, we should talk about, this was another shocker for me. Blake Corum, 0 snaps. Ronnie Rivers, 7. I could not have predicted Ronnie Rivers playing ahead of Blake Corum here. What I did think was interesting, though, Kyren Williams, despite all the punt return talk, 71 snaps for Kyren Williams in this game. Again, 7 for Ronnie Rivers, 0 for Blake Corum. I don't want to drop Blake Corum. I want to see how this goes, but it's certainly a bit scary. Evan, any thoughts on Rams' backfield here?
Yeah, Sean McVay talked about it, and he related it to the offensive line injuries that, maybe they don't trust Blake Corum in pass protection as much. Blake Corum actually was considered a really good pass protector at Michigan, but obviously I don't even know how much he did of that in training camp. And obviously they trust Kyren Williams in that aspect. And Ronnie Rivers has been in the system, not a great player or anything, but has a lot more experience in the offense. So I would hang on to Blake Corum. I don't think he's necessarily behind Ronnie Rivers or anything in the pecking order, but as long as they're dealing with these offensive line injuries, like they're going to lean on Kyren Williams.
Yeah, and like if people started their league with like, I don't know, Bijan Kyren or, Brees Kyren, like teams like starts like that and then load up at wide receiver, those are still my favorite kind of teams. Kyren with this role is just total smash. All right. Fifth story to get to here comes out of Cleveland, just never in the game against Dallas. And at this point, I know we talked about a lot over the summer. I'm just worried that Deshaun Watson's shoulder is totally cooked. Deshaun Watson has not thrown for 300 yards in a game since the 2020 season. Joe Flacco went over 300 yards in 5 of his 6 starts for the Browns last season. Now, Micah Parsons and the Dallas defense controlled this game. There's no doubt about it. But it's just hard for me to be excited about any Browns pass catcher, given the way Deshaun Watson is throwing the football. It's ugly right now, Evan, both on and off the field for Deshaun Watson. Any hope for guys like Amari? And we need to get to the Njoku injury too, making this an even worse day for the Browns.
My hope all along has been that we get Jameis Winston sooner rather than later. I mean, it's over for Deshaun Watson. Another horrible allegation. I don't know if you read the latest one. Just disturbing. Another allegation against him came out. He sucks on the field. I mean, he's terrible. He hasn't played good football in years. Okay, it's over, and they need to find a way to get out of that contract. Maybe they can use the off-field stuff. Like they need to move on from Deshaun Watson.
100%. David Njoku's situation makes it worse. Down with an ankle sprain. I heard them call it a high ankle sprain. They're calling him week to week. Not good, obviously, for David Njoku. They're working out. I saw they're working out like Irv Smith off the street today and stuff like that. So that is not good. On the good side, Jerome Ford, I thought, was fine. 57 out of 76 snaps, catches 6 balls, get the goal line conversion. Jerome Ford can still be an effective piece of this offense. But yeah, just a total mess.
Yeah, and they're still injured. Neither of their starting tackles played in this game, and I don't know when they're going to be back. Yeah. Jordan Wills or Jedrick Wills, their left tackle, suffered a setback late in training camp. Jack Conklin, their right tackle, was supposed to play but didn't. Jordan Akins is going to be the dude at tight end in place of David Njoku, who, if it's truly a high ankle sprain, I would expect them to miss at least 2 games, if not like 4. Amari Cooper had 170 air yards in this game, but only 16 actual yards. So I guess that he will probably be on the bye Leone. It's just, can we trust Deshaun Watson to get these guys the ball? And I lean no.
Leone, by the way, will be out ahead of week 3. Model needs a couple of weeks of data to run there. But yes, that is the general idea for sure on him. All right. Now let's go to NFC. We're going to go alphabetical order here. Let's start with the Arizona Cardinals. Lose in Buffalo. Big story coming out of this game, though, Evan, was the air ball from Marvin Harrison. 1 catch for 4 yards on 3 targets for Marvin Harrison on a day that Kyler Murray threw it 31 times. Meanwhile, Greg Dortch and McBride combined for 17 targets. Now, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared about this. I was taking, in best ball at least, I was taking Marvin Harrison high second round. Any takeaways that you saw from Marvin Harrison? That clip has gone viral of him like wide open in the end zone and Kyler not even seeing him. But yeah, any thoughts on Marvin Harrison and Cardinals stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Gannon talked about it, the Cardinals head coach, and he was like, the Bills just like went out of their way to take Marvin Harrison away. Now, defenses would do that to him in college at Ohio State, but this is the pros now, and Trey and Kyler Murray has that level of trust with guys that he's been around for a couple of years, and Trey McBride and Greg Dortch. I mean, I think that they'll get it together. The other guys came through and made plays. So I mean, it wasn't like a big passing day for Kyler Murray, but I think that everything will kind of come full circle. Marvin Harrison is still an outstanding talent. If Kyler would have hit him on that touchdown late, I don't even think we'd be talking about this.
Yeah, for sure. Moving along to the running back position here. So James Conner was a workhorse, especially early. Trey Benson was his direct backup on early downs. They did play Amari DeMercado on pass downs, which isn't great. I'm not on all of them, but on some of them, which isn't great for Trey Benson. Now, that's the same thing we saw in the preseason. But yeah, as long as James Conner stays healthy, I mean, 4 targets, 16 carries in this game, he's going to be a productive player. Evan, any thoughts on the backfield split for Arizona?
I don't have anything to add to that. I still think that Trey Benson could be number 2 in line for carries, but Amari DeMercado clearly has like this niche role, and so that's why it looks like he's ahead of Trey Benson. And then, yeah, James Conner, workhorse as long as he holds up.
Yeah, 9 targets in this game for Trey McBride. I saw people like freaking out about Trey McBride. It's going to happen.
No, man, 5 for 30 was a good score for a tight end.
Let's go to the Carolina Panthers. All offseason, Evan, they told me, Adam, you don't know what you're talking about. All Bryce Young needed was Deontay Johnson. He's going to be great. That's all he needed was Deontay Johnson and Xavier Legette. You guys will see. Carolina's going to be awesome. They got absolutely boat raced by what I think is going to be a bad Saints team. I mean, they got absolutely smoked by the Saints. I can't even think of any positive takeaways I could have for Carolina coming out of this game. How bad is it right now for Bryce Young and the Panthers, Evan?
Couldn't be worse. This is looking, I mean, it's already probably the trade where the Bears got the number 1 or the Panthers got the number 1 overall pick, and the Bears wound up getting the number 1 overall pick. It's the worst trade in NFL history.
Yeah.
So, and Bryce Young is 5'10", 190. I don't know, like what were we doing? What were we doing thinking that this small little guy who really isn't a runner is deserving of the number 1 overall pick? I looking back in hindsight, like I don't know how anybody convinced themselves that should be the case. And I mean, there were no positive signs. Like
they also lost in this game. Derek Brown, I was reading, he might be done for
He's the best
season.
Player on the roster.
Best player on the roster. I mean, their defense, they got, and we'll get to the Saints in a little bit here. I mean, they got just absolutely run over by this Saints team. I was actually shocked, like how bad that it was. And it honestly, it's not good for Jonathan Brooks, man, because everybody's like, wait, it's late season value for Jonathan Brooks. If they're this bad and the offense is this bad, it's obviously not good for Jonathan Brooks either here. So yeah, just a total mess. Home game against the Chargers next for the Panthers. They'll play better in that game. I'm confident they'll play better in that game, and maybe we're just like being too hard on them, but they're just
no, we're not. Bad. Daniel Jeremiah was talking about on the Move the Sticks podcast that he's like, at some point, like they might have to think about putting in Andy Dalton. This is a big problem. Also, they were not able to protect on the edges against the Saints, and they've got Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack coming up next. So pick up the Chargers defense.
Speaking of number 1 overall picks and this Bryce Young worst trade in NFL history, it was Caleb Williams' debut for the Chicago Bears, and it was not a good one. Bears get down 17-0 to the Titans, can't do anything. Then they block a punt for a touchdown, interception return for a touchdown. They end up winning. But man, Evan, Caleb Williams, 14 of 29 for 93 yards and no touchdown in his debut. What did you think of Caleb's first NFL regular season game?
I think that he showed some promising signs. I understand that the numbers weren't good, and like people shouldn't be starting him in fantasy right now, clearly. But he had a really nice scramble. Keenan Allen dropped the touchdown pass. I don't think that they were necessarily on the same page enough. Caleb missed him by like 1.5 yards on a deep touchdown early. You know, it really is a game of inches oftentimes, and I think that Caleb Williams was close to a better game. And then, I was listening to Kurt Warner talk about this. He's like my favorite quarterback analyst. He's super smart. Caleb Williams' issues were, well, first of all, the interior offensive line play is a problem. Jeffrey Simmons, Harold Landry, Tavondre Sweat of the Titans. I mean, they won the battle in the trenches. But Caleb Williams is still kind of a little too locked in on his first read. And I mean, you know, it's going to be a work in progress. I'm not worried about Caleb Williams like whatsoever, but you know, he's not a fantasy starter.
It doesn't help that Rome Odunze
Yeah,
is going for an MRI on his knee. I haven't seen the result of that yet. We're recording this Tuesday midday, but it doesn't sound great, you know, for Rome Odunze to already be going for an MRI on his knee.
it
So,
sounds like MCL sprain to me,
um,
which can be like 3 to 5 weeks. And then Keenan Allen also hobbled off at one
yeah.
point. I don't know what his injury was, but I know he came in dealing with a heel injury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll have our eye on that. First injury report for them will come out Wednesday. The preseason usage concerns on Cole Kmet carried over to week one.
Yep.
Kmet just 11 routes on 33 Caleb dropbacks. Gerald Everett 21 routes. Now, it's not that big a deal, right? If you want to tell me that Cole Kmet's not that good, Gerald Everett should be playing over him, I disagree. But okay, I am concerned that I hated what Shane Waldron did with the Seahawks last year. And like the early returns aren't good here either. I'm concerned that Waldron's just going to like mess this up for Caleb and this offense. And maybe I should have considered that more when I was taking tons of Odunze and Caleb and DJ Moore and stuff like that in best ball. So yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Shane Waldron or just the overall macro?
Oh, that's another thing that Kurt Warner was talking about. He, especially like for these young quarterbacks, I think like Shane Waldron, like he has Caleb Williams in the shotgun a lot. He should be working from under center and using play action, like to kind of make everything make it. You get clearer reads. You get the linebackers to come up, and the middle of the field opens up. You know, Kurt Warner's like they need to be using more play action, more under center stuff, easy on the shotgun. But you know that's what Shane Waldron is doing.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know if that's an adjustment that Shane Waldron is going to make. It probably isn't.
Yeah, I mean Cliff Kingsbury and Waldron are the two guys who I just scares me. All right.
Yeah, we'll get to Cliff. All right.
Yep. Let's go to the Dallas Cowboys. So they go to Cleveland, get up 20-3 at the half, coast to a 33-17 win. Defense really harassed Deshaun Watson all day. Didn't get to see that much of the offense. The scary part for Dallas stuff, if any, for me, was the Rico Dowdle bags. You know, I thought Zeke Elliott actually looked good, and Zeke Elliott gets the goal line touchdown. Not like full panicked on Rico Dowdle, but wasn't exactly the best start. And also, Dallas loses Jake Ferguson in this game to a knee injury. Sounds like he's day-to-day ahead of week 2. Evan, what'd you think of Dallas's win up there in Cleveland?
For someone who had like a level of skepticism about the Cowboys entering this game, you know, I thought it was really promising. I thought it was promising, and they didn't no one put up big fantasy numbers or anything like that. But that's a really good defense that they played at Cleveland. So Jake Ferguson, I think it's MCL and a bone bruise.
Yeah.
Yeah, MCL sprain and a bone bruise. Jerry Jones was talking about like he's optimistic that Jake Ferguson will be able to play this week. That's just something that Jerry Jones says. I would think that he's going to miss some time.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just to go back to that goal line point on Zeke, they got it down inside the 10. Zeke was in the game. Then they get a penalty down to the 3-yard line, give the ball to Zeke, and he punches it in. So, you know, that's kind of what we expected that Zeke would have the goal line role here. But yeah, we'll see how long he can last ahead of Rico Dowdle here.
I think that people were disappointed in CD Lamb, but I wouldn't be worried about him at all. He had 10 targets. He had 3 carries. He had 5 for 61 as a receiver. Obviously, we want more than that, but I think his usage was fine. I think he'll have an explosion week very soon.
Yeah, I mean, so much better matchups coming up for CeeDee Lamb. Dallas's next games are against New Orleans, Baltimore, Giants, Steelers, Lions. Next games coming up here for the Cowboys. Let's go to Detroit. So overtime win over the Rams on Sunday Night Football for the Lions. Big story, Evan. Waymo for JMO actually happened. 9 targets for Jameson Williams, 32% target share for Jameson Williams, which is massive. Goes off for 5, 121, 1 on national television. Gets the game ball from Dan Campbell. I mean, a lot of haters out there on Jameson Williams.
A lot of haters.
We tried to stay the course on Jameson Williams.
Didn't hear anything from him on Sunday night.
And yeah, I mean, at the expense of Amon-Ra almost, Jameson Williams was the star. Any thoughts on JMO and the rest of the Lions' performance?
Dude is shot out of a cannon.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take him in a race against Tyreek Hill. He is so freaking fast. At one point, he kind of came up lame. I'm like, oh, no. But he's good, man. Oh, also, Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press, Lions beat writer, was tweeting out some highlights of Jameson Williams blocking in the running game. I mean, he's bought in, man. He is bought in, and he's a huge part of the offense. Remember, they cleared the deck for him. Yeah. Like, no competition for the number 2 receiver spot, and he has responded. I would be super, super excited. I mean, he was a guy you could draft like in the 8th round.
Yep. Oh, easily. I mean, if not later in home leagues, and yeah, in best ball he was going 8th or 9th round. I mean, yeah.
What an exciting player, man. He makes fantasy football great again.
Yep. I didn't really have any other notes on the Lions here. The Montgomery Gibbs stuff was kind of what we expected. We didn't see kind of an expanded role for Gibbs. That doesn't mean that it won't happen at some point this season. But yeah, I didn't have any other notes on Lions unless you did, Evan.
I would just say there were a lot of players that came into week 1 having nursed multi-week injuries in training camp. And Jahmyr Gibbs was one of the ones who did and emerged healthy. A bunch of dudes had setbacks. I mean, it was a bloodbath. We talked about that on the Sunday morning show. Like, it makes so much sense to us for the teams to rest these players that have been injured in week 1. The players want to get out there.
Yeah.
And, they put themselves in harm's way.
Yeah. I mean, if Puka Nacua wasn't 100%, it's inexcusable to put him in the game. Like 49ers did the right thing. And we'll get to the 49ers here in a second. But 49ers did the right thing by holding out Christian McCaffrey last night.
David Montgomery was like one of the biggest steals in fantasy last year.
Yeah.
And he's like going to be one of the biggest steals in fantasy again this year.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a really good fit for their offense. Dan Campbell was talking him up after the game. He's like, he represents what it means to be a Lion.
Love Dan Campbell. Okay. Vikings, really optimistic start for the Vikings. They roll over the Giants in New Jersey. Sam Darnold, PFF's top-graded quarterback on the week, goes 19 of 24 for 208 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. That was with Jordan Addison leaving with an ankle injury, which we'll get to in a second. No TJ Hawkinson in this game, and Darnold on the road still went in and played really well. You can see on the highlights, like I think they even talked about it on the broadcast. When Sam Darnold throws, I mean, it looks like the way the ball should come out of a human's hand if they play professional quarterback. It is crazy how tight the spiral is and how good his ball looks. Evan, any thoughts on your boy Sam Darnold going into New York Giants and getting a win?
He was awesome. He was one of my deep sleepers entering the season. I wrote him up negatively in matchups for week 1 because I thought that the Giants would get a ton of pressure. They actually did get a lot of pressure on him from the interior, but he played well amid pressure, which is not something that Sam Darnold has done historically. So I don't know. Maybe he's coming of age. His pass catcher core really isn't in great shape right now because Jordan Addison suffered an ankle injury to the opposite ankle. TJ Hawkinson is not in there. Justin Jefferson is incredible. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he's out there playing a little bit shorthanded right now. So it was very impressive for him to do what he did. I think that Aaron Jones looked really good. Aaron Jones, people didn't want to draft him. And I get why, because he's a little older and He's had, some injury issues, but for as long as he stays healthy, I mean, I think he's going to be really, really effective for them. They love him. He had 16 touches in this game. They did try to involve Ty Chandler some. Ty Chandler had 11 touches, so they're not going to put the full workload on Aaron Jones, but he's a good player when he's healthy.
Going back to the Jordan Addison thing, so he came into this game with an ankle injury he sustained in the preseason. Then he goes out in this game and sprains the other one. Jalen Naylor also came into this game with an ankle injury. He only ran 12 routes on 26 Darnold dropbacks. So he was out there with like Brandon Powell and Trent Sherfield and still playing a game. TJ Hawkinson's not going to be back until maybe like week 6, week 7, week 8, something like that. So yeah, the weaponry is bad. In terms of waivers, I think Jalen Naylor would be the one that I would look at closest, but they do play San Francisco next week. Certainly not an easy
And Jalen
matchup
Naylor coming off the ankle, he was
himself.
really limited in the first game too.
Exactly. So we'll see on Jalen Naylor, but
Yeah, they're kind of like really thin right now at pass catcher.
All right. Let's go to the New Orleans Saints. So Alvin Kamara I thought looked good. And despite his age and everything else, but everybody looked good except for Chris Olave. Everybody on the Saints looked good except for Chris Olave, but Rashid Shaheed smashed, Derek Carr smashed, Alvin Kamara smashed. Juwan Johnson's usage wasn't great, but he did catch a touchdown here in this game. Evan, any thoughts on Saints just absolutely massacring the Panthers on Sunday?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Chris Olave or anything like that. I think that he's a clear-cut buy. I think that they will go out of their way to get him the ball in the next game. I think it was really promising how well Derek Carr played. I mean, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the league in week 1. I'm no pro Derek Carr guy. Again, going up against maybe the worst team in the league, one of them. But still, it was nice to see him play well. Rashid Shaheed came out with the 59-yard touchdown bomb, the first touchdown of Sunday's games. Foster Moreau got in on the action. I mean, it was an all-around effort, and I think that it's going to come full circle for Chris Olave. They know he's the best player on the team.
Yeah, so we talked in the offseason a bunch about the coaching change and how they should be getting more layup targets for Chris Olave. I saw some data from Jacob Gibbs. Saints went from dead last in pre-snap motion and play action last season. In this game, they were first in the entire league in pre-snap motion and third in play action. So they're doing the right thing, and that pre-snap motion play action should be good for Chris Olave here. Yeah, I know there's a lot of pain.
That super high motion rate, that is Mike McDaniel, Kyle Shanahan stuff.
Yep.
So exactly. That is very I mean, the offensive coordinator situation for the Saints, maybe we should have made a bigger deal of this, but this is a huge upgrade going from Pete Carmichael to Clint Kubiak.
Let's go to the New York Giants. I mean, my Lord, Daniel Jones. And not just Daniel Jones. They were inept on both sides of the ball at home against the Vikings. This Daniel Jones situation is coming to a head. I know Evan predicted long ago that Drew Lock would start a ton of games this year for the Giants. That's looking like it's going to be a very good prediction. Daniel Jones in this game, 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick six, 17.4 QBR. I saw video. The Giants fans waited for him after the game as he came out of the tunnel and just started yelling at him and like berating him as he came out, as he went to his car. So it's getting real ugly. The good news is, Evan, they play the Commanders next. This is a horrific secondary. Yeah. So, we'll talk about that more on Friday night. But anyways, it's not good for Daniel Jones. Thoughts on the Giants game here where they got smacked around by the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, if he can't play well against Washington, the Bucs played Washington in week 1. The Bucs punted 1 time the entire game. So it's like now or never for Daniel Jones. Stay optimistic on Malik Neighbors. He wasn't terrible in this game. 7 targets, 5 for 66. I think that they'll get the ball in his hands against Washington, and I think it could be a big week for him.
Yeah, I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson getting 12 targets and Malik Neighbors getting 7 is
that's dysfunctional.
That's not it.
No.
Yeah, that is not it. Malik Neighbors ran 100% of the routes in this game in his NFL debut. I'd also note that Theo Johnson, 38 routes on 50 dropbacks, was at least promising. But again, if they can't get the quarterback situation solved, none of that stuff is going to matter. Still high on Malik Neighbors, though. I would not be panicking on Malik Neighbors whatsoever. Eagles played that Friday night game in Brazil, escaped with a win over the Packers. Now, Saquon stuff, not good for me. He handles 26 of 28 running back opportunities, scores 3 times. a lot of this goes back to the tush push, right? Tush push the Eagles tried to do 3 times. On the first one, there was like a botched exchange between Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts. It was a fumble. The second tush push they did was successful. Third one, they got an offsides call. So are they going to give up on the tush push? I don't think so. But again, like if it's not successful, I could see them going to more Saquon. And by the way, when they're on the 2 or the 3 or the 4, it's going to be Saquon season. But the biggest point I wanted to make about Saquon is there are very few running backs in the league who are going to get 26 of 28 running back opportunities. That just doesn't exist in today's NFL. So I already have some worry that my Saquon fade is going to end up looking really, really bad. Evan, any thoughts on Eagles and Saquon stuff?
Yeah, I'm worried too. I mean, I would even go so far as to capitulate right now. I blew it on Saquon Barkley, and I'm sorry.
Premature capitulation.
No, I don't think so. Not here. I'll just get it out of the way right now. I mean, I should have been higher. Maybe I overthought the situation too much. I mean, like Rich Rebar had a tweet like, oh, should anyone be surprised that Saquon Barkley going from the worst offensive environment in the league to like one of the best, and all of a sudden he looks like the star that he always, should have been? I mean, maybe it was just that simple. I would say that I would go so far as to say that it is that simple.
Well, and it's that, I think, combined with what I said. How many running backs in the league are going to get 26 of 28 running back opportunities? That just doesn't exist in today's NFL that much. So if they're going to use him like that and not use Gainwell and not use Shipley at all, or almost not at all, I mean, that's going to be huge too, clearly for Saquon.
So AJ Brown is Terrell Owens just reached into Jair Alexander's heart and pulled it out and was like holding it. 67-yard touchdown. Devontae Smith was in the slot a ton. Yes. He had some awesome catches. He looked great. 7 for 84. Those guys stood out.
Big offseason question was who's going to be the power slot? Who's going to be the slot guy for Kellen Moore, who had CeeDee Lamb in there previously, who had Kellen Moore in there recently? Slot snaps for the Eagles was Devontae Smith, 41, AJ Brown, 27, Jahan Dotson, 6. Actually, Britton Covey got 7. So, yeah, I have a ton of Devontae Smith, and I'm excited about that. Let's go to the San Francisco 49ers. So, shocking. I was shocked, at least. Late scratch on Christian McCaffrey. Didn't matter. They still smash the Jets. First on the Christian McCaffrey stuff, no Isaac Rendo and Patrick Taylor didn't play or barely played. Jordan Mason looked really good, and Deebo Samuel was kind of the other running back for this team. There's people out there being, I heard people say Jordan Mason sucks. He's a plotter, whatever. I mean, does it really? A, I don't know if that's true. It doesn't look like it's true in my eyes. And B, does it matter when you're the starting running back in a Kyle Shanahan scheme as part of this offense? Like Jordan Mason starts, he's going to smash, So that was it on Christian McCaffrey. He's currently being called day to day. Evan, any thoughts on 49ers from last night?
Their offensive line looked awesome. Their offensive line looks so good. They, one of the kind of unsung things about them, the 49ers, that they really haven't had a great offensive line over the years. They had one great player, Trent Williams, and the rest of the offensive line was kind of pieced together. They dominated against a pretty talented Jets team that, by the way, needs back Hassan Reddick badly. Go fix that situation, Joe Douglas. But yeah, the offensive line play. And Jordan Mason, I mean, he runs it hard, man. He runs it hard. He can play a little bit in the passing game. I think that, Schefter, am I correct in saying that Schefter said that Christian McCaffrey might miss week 2?
Yeah, it sounded like more speculation than reporting.
Well,
but yeah,
after how Jordan Mason played, and Jordan Mason, by the way, had no competition in the backfield. He got everything, and he earned yards after contact as well. I think he had almost 100 yards after contact.
Yeah.
But now they have this level of confidence in him that maybe they didn't, because he's never done it in an actual NFL game. However, what do you think about this thing where Jordan Mason got up on, at the podium and was like, I knew on Friday that I was going to be starting. Could Kyle Shanahan get pissed at him about that?
I don't think he's going to get pissed, but the NFL is going to be pissed. The NFL is going to find them, and I wouldn't be surprised if they go further than that, because the NFL knows the reason their game is so popular is because of people like this, people like us, that everybody's watching fantasy and betting and playing, doing all kinds of NFL stuff. And yeah, it sucks to 49ers knew on Friday that CMC was going to play, that Jordan Mason was going to start, and they didn't tell everyone. Yeah, it's not right. It's not right. And they'll come down on him. But no, I do not. It's not Jordan Mason's fault. It's the PR team's fault. The PR team has to go on and tell him, listen, man, you can't say we told you we're going to start on Friday.
Yeah. Jordan Mason had 28 carries in this game. That's more than Christian McCaffrey has ever had with the 49ers. I also noticed that Christian McCaffrey, his injury was listed as calf/Achilles.
Yeah.
Like the Achilles was added on to that, I'm pretty sure.
There's people panicking out there about Christian McCaffrey. He's an older running back with a lot of mileage on his tires. If and when he gets right, he's going to erupt. I'm really not worried about it. Okay. It just, yeah, it's worse than I thought it was coming into the year. There's no doubt about that. Seattle. Easy-ish win for Seattle over Bo Nix and the Broncos. Really, I didn't think the game was as close as the 26-20 final score. Geno Smith only needed 25 attempts in this game. He had a long touchdown run where he juked, I think it was a safety. I didn't think Geno had that in him, man. I mean, I didn't think Geno was that mobile whatsoever. The concern for me coming out of this game was the Jackson Smith and Jigba stuff. JSN did outsnap Tyler Lockett 53-36 and outrouted him 30-25. But Tyler Lockett was the one who earned 7 targets on a 13.4-yard ADOT, average depth of target. JSN earned just 2 targets on a 3.5-yard ADOT. And that is the same story as last year when all of JSN's targets were right around the line of scrimmage. So it's a concern for me on JSN. Evan, what do you think of Seattle's win over the Broncos?
Yeah, I'm worried about that too. Because I was high on JSN. I liked him as a DFS play this week, and I totally blew it. So that was rough. Patrick Surtain put a glove on DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, for a guy that we were worried about coming off an injury in training camp, led the team in receiving, 6 for 77. The offensive line for Seattle got blown up. Mike Clay was talking about before the season, he thought that Seattle might have the worst offensive line in the league this year. And they did themselves no favors in this game. And then Kenneth Walker, did I see it right that he got banged up late?
He had an abdomen thing, but after the game, he said he's fine.
Okay, cool. He also had another touchdown called back on a DK Metcalf holding penalty, but he looked great, and he pretty much dominated the work over Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah, Zach Charbonnet did have a touchdown catch in this game, but yeah, Kenneth Walker as a runner is so fun to watch. If you guys get a chance, there's some clips out there of some crazy Kenneth Walker runs where he's flipping guys and gyrating all over the place, but guy makes huge plays. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Noah Fant stuff wasn't great, but he did run 20 routes on 28 dropbacks, so still feel okay about the Noah Fant situation here going forward. Tampa Bay, I don't want to go too far because Washington has such an atrocious defense and such an atrocious secondary, but man, Baker looked good and Mike Evans looked good. Baker goes for 4 touchdowns, almost 300 yards. That was the one that we talked about on Friday night. And again, on Sunday, that was the key to DFS. Baker stacks is what won tournaments on Sunday. And Evan was on that one. I know Sam wrote about Mike Evans as the lead in leverage as well. So yeah, pretty clear spot there for the Bucs. I have some more notes on them, Evan, but what do you think of Baker Mayfield? Is this sustainable beyond games at home against the Commanders?
I was kind of in the camp that we'd see some regression. They were losing their offensive coordinator. The Bucs would kind of come back down to earth and be what kind of people expected them to be going into last season. And look, I mean, this is against a JV team. Washington, I think, is the worst team in the league. And we're going to be just picking on them every single week from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah.
But it makes you think that maybe that regression isn't going to happen. Mike Evans scored a couple of touchdowns. Chris Godwin looked great. Jalen McMillan caught a 32-yard touchdown. Their offensive line was really good. Rachaad White remained highly inefficient on the ground. Bucky Irving his usage came late in the game where, the Bucs won 37-20, but he was really productive. I mean, maybe earned himself some more opportunities going forward. They cannot stick with Rachaad White if he's going to be averaging 2 yards a carry.
Yeah, I mean, it was late, but clearly Bucky Irving, even Bucs fans want Bucky Irving to play more, at this point. So already, I should say. Rachaad White, though, gets there because 675, 0 through the air. And that's what Rachaad White can do, plays really well in the pass game. Go ahead, sorry.
One thing to note is just, and I know we focus on offense here, but the Bucs defense got decimated in week one. Like their entire secondary, except for Jamel Dean, looks like they could be in danger of missing the upcoming game against Detroit. I really like the over on that 51 point Lions Buccaneers total early in the week.
Um, I did want to make one last note here on Jalen McMillan, one of our favorite kind of deep late round sleepers at wide receiver. We knew he already won the wide receiver 3 job. He outrouted Trey Palmer in this game 30-7. Again, 30 routes on 34 Baker dropbacks. McMillan could have had another touchdown, did have one touchdown, and he also has contingent upside. You know, he can play the slot. He played a bunch of slot at Washington. He can play the slot if something were to happen to Chris Godwin. So, yeah, I really like having Jalen McMillan on my teams. Last NFC team to get to is the Washington football team, aka the Commanders. Fall behind 13-0 early to the Bucs, down 23-7 early in the third. I guess the bright spot, Evan, was Jaden Daniels getting 2 rushing touchdowns and 88 rushing yards as a whole, both at the goal line. But yeah, man, I mean, Cliff isn't it. They don't have a lot of talent. They're playing Zach Ertz ahead of Ben Sinnott. It's just, I do not feel good about this situation as a whole. Maybe Jaden Daniels can keep it afloat, though, with his legs. Evan, thoughts on the Commanders' debut and Jaden Daniels' debut?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier how there's like a clip on our Twitter of me saying something smart about J.K. Dobbins. There's also a clip of me saying something really stupid about Cliff Kingsbury. So you think we could go in there and delete that tweet? Yeah, it was horrible. So you have one real weapon in the passing game, right? Terry McLaurin. So you just line him up in the same place every single time. Jamel Dean sticks to him the entire game, and he finished with what, 2 catches?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 for 17. They didn't run the ball, with any kind of success other than Jaden Daniels. Is he going to hold up 16 carries a game? Like, wow, that's a lot of running for a skinny dude out there. Jaden Daniels is going to be good in fantasy. I don't know if any other Commanders are.
Yeah. By the way, Luke McCaffrey, deep note for Dynasty people mostly, but Luke McCaffrey right out of the gate, usage was strong. Primary slot in this game was Luke McCaffrey. Ben Sinnott got outsnapped by Zach Ertz 42-13 in this game. All right, let's move it over to the AFC now. We'll start with the Baltimore Ravens in that NFL opener on Thursday. Ravens they're really in it against the Chiefs. They were trailing for most of the game. You get Lamar Jackson ending up with 41 attempts. I do not think that is the way the Ravens want to play football. The good news for the Ravens and Derrick Henry is they are favored in 14 of their next 16 games. So you're not going to see things, if they're winning, you're not going to see things like Justice Hill playing 43 snaps and Derrick Henry only playing 37. So, Evan, what do you think of Ravens' performance in the opener out there? And we'll get to the Isaiah Likely stuff as well.
Yeah, this game feels like so long ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were a lot of takeaways, a lot of panic and overreaction, I think. I mean, and it was fair to panic, I think, at the time about Mark Andrews. He had the injury last year. He had that tough surgery to come back from. He did come back and play a little bit in that playoff game, but I think at the end of the day, what happened is like the Chiefs took him away, and the ball ended up going to Isaiah Likely. Now the Ravens did commit to 2 tight ends as their base offense, which I think is awesome. I saw people criticizing Todd Monken. No, the Ravens had a chance. I mean, they lost by a toe to the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are they definitely have a better roster than Baltimore. So, and committing to the 2 tight end sets, I mean, that's how you get your best talent on the field, because they're really thin at wide receiver. They got Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, who by the way played 85% of the snaps in this game, and then they've got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, and those are their best 4 pass catchers. Getting them on the field together is definitely the best. It gives the Ravens their best chance to win.
And I've been begging for this going back to Isaiah Likely's rookie year, when he was dominating preseason, dominated every time he got chances, was so good at Coastal Carolina. I was like, let's get both of them out there together. They haven't done it until Thursday night when they led the entire NFL for the week 1 in 12 sets in 2 tight end sets. So yeah, that's certainly bullish on Isaiah Likely. Going back to the Mark Andrews thing, Mark Andrews actually outsnapped Isaiah Likely 59-53. Mark Andrews actually ran more routes than Isaiah Likely 38-35. But Isaiah Likely had a 29% target share and Mark Andrews 5% target share. And a lot of the tape bros are telling me, oh, they were bracketing Mark Andrews. They were trying to take him out of the game. And I can buy that. I can buy that. I still think that there's some chance Isaiah Likely is just younger, more explosive, better than Mark Andrews at this point. But I'm not like completely writing off Mark Andrews by any stretch, especially given the usage that he had in that game. Yeah, just to circle back on Derrick Henry. If anyone's selling Derrick Henry, which they're probably not because he scored a touchdown, but I'd probably be buying in some of these half PPR, more boomerish formats. They're going to win a ton of games, and he's going to score a ton of touchdowns in those games. I still believe that on Derrick Henry.
I agree with you.
All right. Let's go to the Buffalo Bills. So Buffalo Bills get down to Arizona 17-3 with 2 minutes left in the first half. Offense is doing absolutely nothing. And then Josh Allen is just like, F it, man. I'm going to go Superman mode. And we've seen this when they were in a trouble last year, when they looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs. This is exactly what Josh Allen did. He was just like, screw it, man. I'm just going to score every touchdown for this team. Runs for a 7-yard touchdown. Runs for a 6-yard touchdown later. Goes 18 of 23, spreading the ball around to everyone. Bills end up scoring 34 points and win. And to me, this is how the Bills are going to play and win. Josh Allen is going to account for an insane amount of their touchdowns. Evan, what do you think of Bills' performance against the Cardinals?
The total on this game dropped all the way down to 45.5 before the game. I guess there was concerns about the win.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
so
ridiculous.
Dumb. So dumb.
And it wound up being like a monster shootout. So that was really nice because I was on that over when it was up at 48, and I was like, God, I'm a freaking donkey. It's down to 45.5. Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen is the best player on the football field. Joe Brady, you remember when he took over for Ken Dorsey last season, he really put an emphasis on the running game, and they ran the ball a lot in this game. They had 33 final rushing attempts, only 25 pass dropbacks. I don't know if they're going to continue to do that. They have a really wide-ranging rotation of wide receivers, though, and that is going to be frustrating if Josh Allen isn't, firing off a lot of pass attempts, because these guys are going to end up like canceling each other out. I was really disappointed in Dalton Kincaid in this game, but no one went over 51 yards. I did think that Keon Coleman's usage was pretty promising. I think he led the Bills receivers in playing time and target share. So he's a guy to hang on to.
Yeah. So first on Dalton Kincaid, Josh Allen dropped back 30 times. Dalton Kincaid ran 25 routes. People are like, oh, you see, Dawson Knox, messes up Dalton Kincaid. That wasn't it. I mean, that's not why Dalton Kincaid failed in this game. Again, he ran 25 routes on 30 dropbacks. I'm still optimistic on Dalton Kincaid. The guy that I'm be more worried about is Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel ran 9 routes on 30 Josh Allen dropbacks. Mac Hollins ran 20. Khalil Shakir ran 21. Keon Coleman led the way with 27. I know Curtis Samuel came into this game with turf toe and missed some time, but yeah, that's certainly scary for anyone who drafted Curtis Samuel out there. So yeah, Dawson Knox, by the way, only ran 13 routes in this game, but it's going to be flat. Like, it's going to spread out. I still think that Dalton Kincaid can consolidate targets here, but it certainly was not a good start for him.
I think that there were some reasons for optimism on Ray Davis during training camp and even leading into training camp, but he is sharing the number 2 back job with Ty Johnson right now. And I don't think that Ray Davis is necessarily a priority bench hold.
I should note that Ty Johnson did pick up a knee injury this game. I haven't seen the severity on it, but yes, to Evan's point, Ty Johnson played 14 snaps in this game, and Ray Davis only played 6. So, I mean, they came into this game with the plan to play Ty Johnson ahead of Ray Davis.
Yeah, and Joe Buscaglia, their longtime beat writer, has been like banging the drum that it's not going to be all Ray Davis in the number 2 role by any means. They really like Ty Johnson.
Let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals. This was the Survivor killer. We have a Survivor article each week by Ryan Reynolds. I hope you guys did not pick the Bengals. First thing Evan said on Sunday morning when we did the last minute live stream was like, Bengals are in trouble. Like, they can lose this game. You combine that with that in Survivor, they were massively picked, like 40, 50% in the Circa Survivor. We already had that data, hopefully, when you had to make your picks. So I think Evan and I both went with Bucks in Survivor, which turned out to be a nice little edge there.
I
Shout out.
actually never changed it. I went with the Chargers.
Okay, well, that worked also.
Yep, that worked.
Um,
Yeah, I'm in a Survivor with I think like 70 people, and something like 30 of them took
right.
the Bengals.
Really bad. I mean, really bad in my opinion in that spot, given all their problems plus how many people took them. Anyways, Jamar Chase did show up for this game and did play. He ran 31 routes on 35 dropbacks, but only 6 catches on 6 targets. I thought Joe Burrow was concerning, man. Like dropping his eyes, was like flexing his wrist on the sideline. It was kind of a scary performance. Did not have T. Higgins in this game. And maybe I'm underestimating. Maybe I did not, coming into this game, give New England defense enough credit. They can defend and they have really good pieces in the secondary. And I probably should have given that more weight. But anyways, Evan, what do you think of Bengals loss to the Patriots?
Yeah, and the Bengals didn't really formulate any kind of a running game. The Patriots stuck Christian
Gonzalez, yeah.
Gonzalez on Jamar Chase, and Christian Gonzalez is a freaking stud. He was one of the best rookie defenders in the league last year before he got hurt, and I mean I think he could be like a legit number one corner. Emerges one this season like a legit like borderline shutdown corner. Jamar Chase, he said that he had food poisoning the day before the opener. I didn't look at his peripheral stuff.
31 routes on 35 dropbacks.
Okay, so he really wasn't limited at all.
Nope.
Yoshi played 100% of the snaps, only 3 for 26 and 6 targets. And it was just, you're right. You know, maybe we didn't give the Patriots defense enough credit. They were without Christian Barmore and Matt Judon, 2 of their best front 7 players. Of course, they traded Matt Judon, and Christian Barmore is like out indefinitely due to blood clots. I don't even know if he's going to play this season, but they're still playing quality defense. No question. They controlled this game.
Go at Chiefs in week 2. Big game, week 2, Bengals at Chiefs. I saw Schefter say that maybe he wasn't that optimistic that T. Higgins will be back for this game, but we'll see. Bengals certainly need him. On the Zach Moss, Chase Brown stuff, Zach Moss got the 5-yard touchdown. Moss also out-targeted Chase Brown 4-3. Routes were Zach Moss 17, Chase Brown 13. That's kind of what we expected. I think the hope on Chase Brown is that they need his explosiveness and they start to give him more and more reps. But yeah, Evan, any thoughts on Zach Moss, Chase Brown after seeing week 1?
You know, they're just, I think they're guys that you're going to be keeping on your bench for week 2 against the Chiefs, probably.
Yeah. They're certainly, you know, we're probably going to need someone to consolidate, but this Bengals going to have much better offensive days. I'm not like overly worried here yet. Broncos, speaking of worried, I'm here in the Denver area, and yeah, everybody wants like Bo Nix sucks shirts printed already. It was a horrific debut for Bo Nix. Did not look anything like he looked in the preseason when he played really, really well. I mean, inaccurate, ugly. I don't really know what happened, but going to Seattle is a difficult place to play. He didn't have great weaponry around him, or he won't have great weaponry around him all year. Evan, what do you think of Bo Nix's regular season debut up there in Seattle?
You know, really, I don't know that any of the rookie quarterbacks really performed that well in week 1. So, I mean, I guess you can sort of hang your hat on that. Garrett Bowles, their stud left tackle, suffered an ankle injury. Yeah, Bo Nix on passes of 10-plus yards downfield, he went 2 for 12 for 42 yards and 2 interceptions. That, like, I moved Cortland Sutton up at the end of training camp in the top 150, and it was because like you look at their depth chart and he's like the clear number 1 on paper, right? But the style of play of Bo Nix really doesn't fit Cortland Sutton whatsoever. So I don't know. I kind of already regret that. Cortland Sutton did have 12 targets in this game, but 38 yards to show for it.
Yeah, and you know, Sean Payton's doing the Sean Payton stuff. Marvin Mims isn't playing. Devon Vele got 8 targets. Josh Reynolds got 8 targets. An interesting note, and we talked about this a bunch on the waiver show, Jaleel McLaughlin got like a bunch of base carries. And then obviously we know he can play in the pass game as well. Javonte had a decent role as well. It was just weird the way that they used their running backs. McLaughlin, I believe, is Daigle's number 3 waiver wire ad of the week. You can check the waiver wire for more on that. But yeah, I think McLaughlin should be owned, like definitely at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any
Absolutely.
thoughts
And
on the?
I was like a little discouraged by Javonte Williams. I was
Yeah.
surprised that Audric Estime was active and he fumbled, which has been an issue for him dating back to the preseason. But I mean, if you want it to be a Javonte Jaleel backfield, not any other guys taking work away from those.
Yeah, I mean, Javonte got out carried by Jaleel 10-8 and out targeted 5-2. By the way, the Bo Nix among non-wide receivers, I'm sorry, behind non-skill players, Bo Nix fastest guy on the slate. Crazy. But yeah, they need him to run. I mean, he can give it a little bit of fantasy value because they need him to run
Yeah.
and run a lot. Okay. Houston goes to Indy and puts 29 points on the Colts. Now, I want to be clear, when you play the Colts, you're going to get a ton of plays off because they play so fast and they make these explosive splash plays when they hit. So you're going to get a ton of plays off when you play the Colts. The Texans did so. I'll get to the wide receiver stuff in a second, but my Lord, Joe Mixon, 30 of 33 running back carries, 3 of 4 running back targets. And we talked a bunch about the preseason injury stuff. Didn't affect Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was banged up in camp. Didn't affect him as he got 33 touches in this game. Evan, thoughts on Joe Mixon's first game as a Texan and any other Texan thoughts?
Yeah, he led all players in week 1 in yards from scrimmage. I mean, and the failure, Cam Akers wasn't even active for this game, but the failure of any other Texans back to emerge as any kind of factor, like they're just going to give the ball to him as much as he can handle. Gus Bradley, the Colts defensive coordinator, talked after the game how, just basically admitted that they were terrified of the Texans' 3 receivers. And so they played light boxes the entire game. Yeah. It also obviously helps that the Texans' offensive line is healthy after being the most injured offensive line in the league last year. And Kenyon Green, their left guard, who was a first-round pick a couple years ago, has been hurt and all kinds of stuff. He was a guy that really, really stood out. Like, their offensive line could be like legit top 5 unit if they could keep this thing together. Their offense is just – they're loaded, man.
Loaded.
And they actually – C.J. Stroud was actually under a decent amount of pressure. The Colts have a really talented defensive line, but he played well under pressure. He averaged over 12 yards per pass attempt when pressured. He's just awesome. This offense is sick.
What they've put around, he's awesome, and then what they put around him is awesome also. And yeah, CJ Stroud is just an absolute smash. A guy that I wanted to highlight who I thought had better usage than the box score suggested was Tank Dell. Tank Dell ran 33 routes on 38 CJ Stroud dropbacks. He had 45% of the Texans' air yards. He was 22% target share, second on the team behind Nico Collins. And also, he was like open for a touchdown. CJ Stroud underthrew him by a little bit. I tweeted the video yesterday. If you guys want to see it, Colts DB makes a nice play. Otherwise, Tank Dell was just an absolute monster game coming out of him. Steph Diggs, on the other hand, his ADOT was really low. Like 1 point something yards. That was only on his targets, though. I know Ben Gretsch went back and watched all of CJ Stroud's dropbacks and came away saying Steph Diggs had a more varied route tree than it appeared. But yeah, to me, Steph Diggs is their underneath guy. And yeah, he scored 2 touchdowns in this game. But I might rather have Tank Dell at this point than Steph Diggs. I'm not sure Steph Diggs is capable of winning targets down the field when he's competing with Nico Collins. And
I do think
Tank
he's
Dell.
going to be a huge factor in the red zone, as we saw on Sunday, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the thing. All these 3 receivers are going to smash. Every once in a while, like maybe only 2 per game, but then the other guy's going to get his the next game.
Yeah.
All these 3 guys are going to have big seasons.
Yeah. I know Evan was mega high on Nico Collins coming into the season. I was also high. All our stuff was high on Nico Collins. I guess the regret that I have is that I just couldn't do it enough. When I had the 13th pick, the 14th pick, I was taking Marvin Harrison or Puka Nacua. And I was like, I kind of want to take Nico Collins here, but I didn't want to end up with, 50% Nico Collins because I was already taking him 15th, 16th, 17th. So I don't know, man. But at this point, if I had a 60% Nico Collins bag, I'd be like, yes, that would excite me. Dude is just such a baller. Such a baller. All right. Let's go to the Colts. Anthony Richardson completes just 9 passes in this game, scores 27 fantasy points as the Colts lose a wild one to the Texans. Anthony Richardson made one of the most absurd throws you'll ever see in an NFL game on a bomb to Alec Pierce. And he had an insane run where he basically put his shoulder down and ran over, I think it was a linebacker, maybe a safety. He ran over this guy to get in to the end zone. And it goes back to what Shane Steichen said in the offseason. You don't tell Steph Curry to stop shooting threes. You don't tell Anthony Richardson to stop putting his shoulder down and running over dudes because he's just not good if you don't let him do that. So it's hard to say it was positive after completing just 9 passes in the game. But from a fantasy perspective, I thought it was positive for Anthony Richardson. Evan, what do you think of A-Rich and the Colts?
Yeah, on that throw, the thing that was most impressive to me about it was that he even had the balls to try to do that, because there were like 3 guys in the area of Alec Pierce.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that he even would try that. I watched it like a bunch of times, and I was like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was incredible. If you haven't seen it, I mean, everybody's talking about it. Everybody's already seen it. What else we got here? Oh yeah, some guy was tweeting at me that I called Alec Pierce a wind sprint runner, and then he goes out and that's 3 for 125 and a touchdown. So that's great. I mean, he theoretically, like, he makes sense with Anthony Richardson because he can run. I wouldn't be relying on him or anything like that in fantasy, but I mean, he does make sense from a stylistic standpoint. You mentioned that Anthony Richardson had 27 fantasy points, 9 completions. He left a lot of yards on the field. A.D. Mitchell, I mean, was real close to a big game
Monster.
But Anthony Richardson missed him a couple of times.
3 times. 3 times he was wide open for touchdowns. Yeah.
Multiple touchdown catches. He missed them on multiple touchdown catches. I think that they'll get that sorted out though. But you got to be feeling really good about Anthony Richardson right now.
Well, what people are going to say, Evan, is they're not going to get it sorted out because Anthony Richardson is a horrible thrower and inaccurate with the football. That's what they're going to say. You know what I mean? And like he's not going to improve as his accuracy, which the data is somewhat clear. Like inaccurate quarterbacks in college don't suddenly become accurate at the NFL level. But from a fantasy perspective, it's just a smash. I do think that like the Michael Pittman stuff is a little bit worrisome with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, it's from a pass volume standpoint. Michael Pittman lived on volume.
Yeah,
last season, and he's not going to necessarily get that with Anthony Richardson. Jonathan Taylor had how many carries? 16 carries, and none of them went for more than 7 yards. I think he'll be fine. The Texans have a really, really good run. They had like the best run defense in the league last year, and I don't see any reason for that to change.
A role for JT was awesome, and they have nothing behind him. I mean, he's got to play almost every snap for this.
That's really nice for him.
And Josh Downs didn't play in this game with that ankle. Again, if you go back, I tweeted it. A.D. Mitchell could have had just an absolute monster game. Jacksonville. So somewhat surprisingly low scoring game against Miami. Jacksonville loses 20-17. Maybe would have been different this game if Travis Etienne doesn't fumble going into the end zone at the end of the third quarter. It was a real backbreaker. Immediately after Travis Etienne fumbles through the back of the end zone or whatever he did, very next play, 80-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill. And Miami ends up winning this game. The story to me, though, for fantasy was Tank Bigsby. I mean, Tank Bigsby was so bad last year, they couldn't put him on the field. This year, Tank Bigsby played 17 snaps, got 12 opportunities to Etienne's 15. After the fumble, Bigsby out-touched Etienne 5-3. That was in major crunch time, key points in the game. So they have way more faith in Tank Bigsby right now. If you use the 2nd or 3rd round pick on Travis Etienne, you cannot feel good about the way Tank Bigsby's was used in this game. Evan, any thoughts on that and Jaguars stuff?
Yeah, Tank Bigsby should be rostered everywhere. I mean, we've been over this over and over and over again. The Jaguars really wanted it to make it happen last year with Tank Bigsby, and then their confidence, either his confidence were shot or their confidence in him were shot when he kept fumbling in the preseason and then in week 1, and he just never got it together. But it was smooth sailing this training camp, and they want to use him. And after Etienne fumbled, Tank Bigsby was like the lead back.
Yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily going to translate, but I mean they're going to use him for sure.
The good news on the pass game, and listen, the pass game wasn't good. Trevor Lawrence was 12 of 21. They only ran 50 plays in this game, did the Jaguars, which is absurdly low. NFL average is usually around 63, 64, something like that. The good news, though, is that they played almost exclusive 3 wide receiver sets, and it was almost always Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr., and Evan Ingram in the slot, right? Like, so it's we know who's going to be out there. We just need Trevor Lawrence to get more plays off and to have better games. But yeah, at least the players are out there.
I'd be excited about Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
I
Looks like a
mean,
baller.
Trevor Lawrence is not going to have any more games probably for the rest of the season where he only has 12 completions.
Yeah.
Brian Thomas looks great.
Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs from that NFL opener. They had led this game pretty much the whole way. Takeaway for me was Rashee Rice, man. I know he was a guy we talked about so much this summer as a massive target once we realized that the suspension wasn't coming. I don't know why people, ding him for his route tree. This is what I want. Let me get my wide receivers against linebackers, get layup routes, and then go nuts on Yak. And Rashee Rice is awesome in Yak. So I'm pretty optimistic on Rashee Rice here going forward. Evan, any thoughts on that? And I have some
So
more Chiefs stuff
optimistic
too.
about
Yeah.
Rashee Rice. So optimistic. He 33% target share in a Patrick Mahomes quarterback offense. 78% playing time clip. He played 58% last season. So optimistic about Rashee Rice. He's going to have a monster season.
Xavier Worthy ran 77% of the routes in this game. And that's notable to me because Rashee Rice didn't hit a 70% plus route rate until week 14 last year. Now, people kept tweeting at me, yeah, but Adam, Marquise Brown didn't play. Listen, last year when Rashee Rice wasn't playing, they were trying out guys like Justin Watson. I mean, just total dust out there, and they still wouldn't let Rashee Rice play. So it was encouraging to me that even with Marquise Brown out, Xavier Worthy played. I think the 3 wide receiver set is not going to include Justin Watson when Marquise Brown gets back. I think it'll still include Xavier Worthy when Marquise Brown gets back. So if people are out there panicked because Xavier Worthy only had a few targets, I know he scored a couple of touchdowns. I still want to be buying on Xavier Worthy there. So yeah, the volume wasn't there, but dude is awesome.
By the way, it sounds like Marquise Brown has a real chance to play in week 2 against the Bengals. Isaiah Pacheco played 80% of the Chiefs' offensive snaps, and Samaje Perine had a bad drop. Now, Isaiah Pacheco also had a bad drop. I think it would have went for a touchdown on a wheel route. But 80% of the snaps for Isaiah Pacheco, that's more than he played in any of the playoff games last year, and he averaged over 23 touches per game in those playoff games. Maybe they'll ramp up Samaje Perine, but I don't think that that's necessarily a guarantee, especially if Perine continues to make mistakes.
Yeah, agreed. Travis Kelce, I did over 200 best ball drafts this year. I took Travis Kelce 0 times among those, and I feel pretty good about that after this game. Travis Kelce has now been held under 10 half PPR points in 9 of his last 16 games. Travis Kelce has one, and this is the regular season only, obviously, but he has one game over 20 points in that span, does Travis Kelce. So yeah, I mean, the underneath stuff is going to Rashee Rice, whereas in the past it had gone to Travis Kelce.
He did play 89% of the snaps.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. But he got outproduced by Noah Gray, who then the Chiefs gave a contract extension to after the game. So I don't know, just something to note.
Raiders. So pretty disappointing to me. I thought the Raiders would play well and have a chance to win this game. They just didn't. And by the way, before we get into the fantasy stuff, I just got to say, I like Antonio Pierce. I do. That punt in the fourth quarter was the worst punt I've ever seen in my entire life. 4th and 1. They're down 6 from the Chargers 43. There's 7 minutes left in the game. 4th and 1, down 6 from the Chargers 43. And they punt. I mean, absolutely inexcusable. And I love Antonio Pierce. I know the guys are playing hard for him. And I think, but man, like, you just can't do that. Anyways, fantasy stuff. The Zamir White stuff looks bad right out of the gate. Got outplayed by Alexander Madison. And right after the game, all offseason, Pierce is like, Zamir White's the man. He's the man. He took one game for Antonio Pierce to say, you know what? We're going to go with a hot hand at running back because Alexander Madison looked so good. Do you buy that, Evan? And any more thoughts on the Raiders?
Yeah, I buy it. I mean, Leone saw right through. Leone looked at Antonio Pierce and saw right through him and was right. And so I will have to publicly capitulate again to Leone. I didn't even have Zamir White that high. Leone was so freaking low on him. He's like, no way, no chance. And he nailed it. So great job. Hats off. Great analyst, Michael Leone.
I was encouraged by Brock Bowers' debut. So Brock Bowers leads this team in targets. On the other hand, though, when you don't have a very efficient pass game, and we know it's not going to be very efficient, you need a huge target share for Devontae Adams to pay off, second or third round ADPs. 18% target share for Devontae Adams is a bit scary because I thought Jacoby played a good game, and I thought that Brock Bowers played a good game as well here. So a little scary there on Devontae Adams. Raiders are at the Ravens next. Evan, any more thoughts on Devontae Adams or the Raiders before we move on?
I would consider Brock Bowers already a low-end tight end one.
Definitely.
And I think that there's still meat on the bone there. I think that they can come up with more ways to get the ball in his hands. He had 8 targets in this game, and I think in 6 for 58, really nice tight end score. But I think that the upside is strong. I think that he could actually, and I had him way too low in fantasy, but I'm ready to capitulate already. I love the way that they use him, but I think that they can even use him more than that. They need to, because their passing game is not going to be functional. They need to just feed the ball to Brock Bowers.
Yeah, just one more thing on the Madison stuff I want to note. Dylan Lobby, who I thought had a chance to be the pass down back, was not. He was inactive. And they were just like, you know what? We're going to use Alexander Madison in that role. And honestly, like if I knew that, I should have been taking more round 20 Madison. That was a bad one.
Yeah, it's just the stink is so strong from last season.
Exactly. Dolphins. So Dolphins sneak away with a narrow win over the Jaguars. Mentioned that late third quarter ETN fumble. Immediately after that 80-yard bomb to Tyreek on the next play changed the entire game. Tyreek obviously unfazed by what went down in outside the stadium beforehand. Good news was Devon Achane usage. Lined up as a wide receiver on 15 of his 37 snaps, 19% target share. Also converted a goal line carry. Now, I should note that both Achane and Raheem Mostert got banged up in this game. Achane with the ankle, Mostert with a chest injury. They're both on the injury report. Jalen Wright was a healthy scratch. Do not drop Jalen Wright. Like, Raheem Mostert's such a good bet to get banged up. Achane's already banged up. Do not drop Jalen Wright. Evan, I know you already wrote the matchup for this game on Thursday. Thoughts on Miami coming out of their week 1 win?
Yeah, Devon Achane, it's okay. He doesn't need his ankle because he can fly. That was a really promising opener from Devon Achane. He had 17 touches. He was ahead of Raheem Mostert. I was very, very encouraged by that. Yeah. And, as someone who I think I was the highest in the freaking industry on Devon Achane. But hopefully this injury is nothing to worry about.
Jonnu Smith, I had some optimism for. Like, they don't have any wide receivers behind Tyreek and Waddle. They really could use Jonnu Smith. Only 17 routes on 44 dropbacks in this game for Jonnu Smith was a concern for me.
This is the thing. This is how this box score should look. Tyreek Hill, 7 for 130 and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle, 5 for 109. Devon Achane, 7 for 76. Nobody else gets the ball.
Yeah.
Just feed those 3 dudes. This offense is a freaking track meet. They use motion on 91% of their plays. Like, Mike McDaniel knows what he is doing.
Big time.
And he knows how to use these guys, and he's just going to keep feeding them, and they're going to make big plays until it's winter time, and then they peter out.
I will say for DFS, like, there is value in knowing where the ball is going. In other words, when Tua Tagovailoa has big games, you know where it's going, right? And that, super valuable. So yeah, Tyreek is just unstoppable. All right. Patriots did not do much on offense, but didn't need to. Bengals were so bad offensively. The highlight, at least offensively, for the Patriots was clearly Ramondre Stevenson, 25 carries, 120 yards, 1 touchdown. Also added 3 catches here in this game. I was pretty low on Ramondre coming into the season, just on overall team ineptitude, but listen, if they can play like this, it's going to be fine. Evan, what'd you think of Patriots win in Cincy?
Well, I wrote in the week 1 matchups column that I thought that the Bengals might have the worst run defense in the NFL this season, and that kind of looked like it could be right in week 1. That's not to take away from, but that's something to maybe file away. They play the Chiefs. They play Pacheco this week, just for matchup purposes. But Ramondre looked great. He was hurt like all last season. He looked explosive. He looked powerful. The offensive line played a lot better than I thought that they would. Again, maybe that's, at least in part because of the matchup. But Ramondre looked awesome. And,
Yeah.
and he needs to be the focal point of the offense.
Yeah. I didn't even have any notes on wide receiver or tight end because, I'm just not interested in any of them, So, all right. Jets last night lose to 49ers. It was ugly. It got so ugly they had to pull the starters late, not the way Aaron Rodgers wanted to come back. Allen Lazard ended up with one of the highest scoring fantasy scores of the week, 689-2. And this is what I was worried about for the Malachi Corley stuff and everything else. It's like Rodgers loves this guy. He's going to be out there. And if he's going to have games like this, again, 689-2, he's going to stay out there. Evan, any thoughts on the Jets going to San Francisco and really not putting up much of a fight?
I really haven't had high hopes for the Jets offense at any point. I think that putting up 19 at San Francisco is actually kind of good for them. I just think their ceiling is like a mediocre offense. And that's what we saw on Monday night. They couldn't run the ball against the San Francisco front, which that actually kind of surprised me. I thought that they would be able to run the ball more. But yeah, my expectations are limited in the first place for the Jets offense.
I mean, in this role and with his talent, Breece Hall is pretty indestructible. We saw that last year with horrific quarterback play. Breece Hall was still one of the most valuable players in fantasy, but yeah, it's clearly not ideal. Do think they can play much better, at San Francisco Monday night, clearly not, the best spot. I still have some optimism I still have a lot of optimism for Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, I should say. Let's go to Pittsburgh. So this was the Arthur Smith Bowl. Steelers go to Atlanta. TJ Watt just goes nuts, as we talked about in the Atlanta section. Pittsburgh wins an ugly game 18-10 with Justin Fields starting. Now, Russ Wilson missed this game with the calf. Sounds like Russ Wilson's going to miss week 2 as well, as expected when Arthur Smith is your coordinator and Justin Fields is your quarterback. Steelers run it 41 times and had the lowest pass rate over expectation in the league. That's just the way it's going to be. Evan, any thoughts on Steelers getting a win down there in Atlanta?
I think that this is exactly how Arthur Smith wants to play. And I think that this is what they're going to do all season long. I think that as long as they're winning, like Justin Fields should keep the starting job. Russell Wilson is old. They're not paying him any money. He's definitely not the future. There's a small chance that Justin Fields is. And I think within the confines of a super run-heavy offense where he is part of the rushing offense, and he had 14 carries in this game, I think he makes a ton of sense for them. Najee Harris, 20 carries, but kind of ran in place. It was George Pickens was decent, and then you're not going to get really anything more than one guy contributing, fantasy relevant numbers in a pass catcher core in an offense like this, where they're just going to pound the rock relentlessly and lean on their defense. They can win games that way.
George Pickens is a baller, he had a good game here. He only ran a route on 76% of Justin Fields' dropbacks in this game. Now, why? Because Arthur Smith, right? That's it. Because they're not dropping back that much. You should have George Pickens out there for 100% of the dropbacks. Arthur Smith does not. So that's a little bit of a worry for me on George Pickens, combined with the fact that Justin Fields obviously struggles a lot as a thrower. The Steelers were in a 3 or 4 tight end formation on 22 of 69 snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. I mean, 4. I didn't even know 4 tight end formations. I didn't know that
you could do 4.
I thought that was like punt return or something. Is the only time you have four tight ends on the field. Absolutely insane. Cordell Patterson got 4 opportunities in this game. Jaylen Warren got 4 opportunities in this game. So the Arthur Smith stuff, man, I know better. I kind of stopped taking Jaylen Warren once he had the hamstring thing, and I started thinking about the Cordell Patterson stuff, but I probably still have too much. I don't want to drop Jaylen Warren, but it's not great.
It's not.
Yeah. Last one here on this week 1 team by team is the Tennessee Titans. Titans were actually up 17-0 in this game at Chicago. Then special teams gives up a touchdown, and Will Levis chokes it off. I don't know if you saw his final pick 6, but he just goes to his knees and just is devastated on that final pick.
Goes to his knees and chokes it off.
The split between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears was wide in this game, and I think we started to kind of get wind of that late in the drafting process. Tony Pollard 16-4 in carries, 4-4 in targets. I know Brian Callahan came out after the game and said maybe we'll tighten that up, or we should tighten that up, but we'll see. Tony Pollard looked good. Again, have any thoughts on Titans
Yeah, Pollard has
loss?
looked good since the last 4 or 5 games of last season. I mean, he
Yeah.
looked great in the preseason. He looked really good here. As you mentioned, Brian Callahan said they'd use Tajay Spears more, but Brian Callahan is also, although he would often call them interchangeable, he did at one point say he thinks that one will emerge as the leader. And to me, that's got to be Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
Will Levis is just a reckless player. I mean, he has a lot of ability, and he can be a fun dude to watch and all that. But man, he makes some decisions. You're just like, what in the world are you thinking? 127 yards on 32 attempts. That's not going to get it done. DeAndre Hopkins, what the heck, man? I know you have the underlying stuff for him. I mean,
9 routes.
9 routes.
And Traylon Burks ran 28. I mean, why even play?
I don't get it.
Why even play? Take the week off. If clearly he has a knee thing and he's not right. Only other thing that I'd say about Titans pass game and Will Levis, I know you talked about it Sunday morning, Evan. Like Chicago's secondary is no joke, no joke. And so Will Levis is going to have better matchups, but it's certainly scary for the Ridley, Hopkins, Burke stuff. There is absolutely no doubt about that. All right. That is going to do it for the first team by team show of the 2024 season. We'll be back here every Tuesday afternoon / evening going over what we saw the previous week and what it means going forward. Again, to get our takes for the games before they happen, that is for in-season subscribers. We talk on Friday nights, Sunday mornings. Also, Evan's matchup column is a great way to get his take on every player in every game each week. For producer Luke, for producer Ryan, for Evan, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.